with that, I want to introduce the next speaker, who, like I said, has been a friend of mine for 26 years now. No, it's you.
26 years. What? That was the clip. Oh.
26 years. I only known him 3.
I thought you were.
No, we're saving him for later. So, Rick, we kid about each other a lot, but Rick is probably, not even probably, is the smartest person I've ever met in most things. I don't want to get his head get too big. You know, it's funny, when we have calls, I always say, you know, it's really cool because we play Stump Rick. Let's come up with a disease or a product he doesn't know about. And so far, we're like a 1,000,000 to 0. He's winning. He probably spends his nights reading every medical digest that comes out every month. If you mention a disease to him, he'll proceed with 7-syllable words explaining why it happens and what's going on in your body. And yet he can speak in English too, which we really appreciate. Usually, sometimes I have to be on the side, like with sign language translating, but most of the time it's pretty cool. But anyway, I want to introduce Rick Dietsch, the man who made all these products, and my best friend.
That's what I get in lieu of pay. Who has not heard me speak before? Oh, wow. This is awesome. I can tell jokes again. I do have a microphone test I usually use on stage. So I say, welcome to County General Hospital. Due to a mix-up in urology, apple juice will not be served today. That's just to see if the microphone works. All right, so where do I have to stand?
Not past his shoe, you're good.
Not past
His shoe.
his shoe.
That's your
Just stay over here. Okay.
Don't miss that shoe.
I learned it past his shoe.
I've been asked to speak about everything. He said not past that way.
And not past his head.
And not past
Doug's head.
Doug's head. All right. My name's Rick Dietsch. I'm a biochemist. And I like to say I'm a little different in the field because I'm both a pharmaceutical and a nutritional biochemist. As a pharmaceutical biochemist, I run a biotechnology company, Nutritional. We have drugs for the treatment of pain. Multiple sclerosis is our biggest drug. We're in phase 2 trials for MS. And that work was where I first started working with cobra venom. But step back, my history of drug research goes back to undergraduate and graduate school where I worked on cone snail venom. Has anyone ever heard of cone snails? Cone snails are really, really cool. There's over 500 species in the world. They're these venomous snails that live in the ocean, and they're brightly colored. So if you ever scuba dive and you see something that's slow and brightly colored, stay away from it, it's venomous. That's the hint. If it's slow and brightly colored, it will kill you. Okay? So these cone snails sit on the bottom of the ocean, and they stick out their tongue, and it looks like a worm. So a fish comes in, eats the worm, and it stabs the fish, paralyzes it, and eats the fish. So we studied the venom from cone snails as potential drug products. And the coolest part of that story, and my wife Liz is in the back, say hi Liz. So I actually discovered a new species of cone snail when we were scuba diving. And if anyone's ever done biology, if you discover a new species, you have to find 2 of them. And if you find 2 of them, it's considered a new species and you get to name it. So I got to name a new snail, I named it after my wife. So it's called the Elizabeth cone, Conus elizabethii, and yes, my wife has a venomous snail named after her. How romantic is that? So I did work on cone snails, and I kind of switched because it's really, really, really hard to milk a snail. You get very little venom from it. It's very, you get a couple of drops. And so I was working with something called alpha conotoxins, which bind to the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors in the body. And I found out that cobra venom, alpha copratoxin, binds to the same receptor. And it's really easy to milk a cobra, and you get a lot of venom from it. So I kind of transferred in the mid-90s to working on cobra venom, and that was the basis for the research that eventually led to Plus Relief and some of the other products. So that's me as a pharmaceutical biochemist. But in the mid-90s, I met and married my wife, and she has really expensive tastes. And so I had to start making some money. You know, my joke was champagne taste on a beer budget. And so I got a job with Rexall Sundown, which was the largest manufacturer of dietary supplements on the planet at the time. And I started working in dietary supplements. And we had 400 researchers at Rexall. It was a really, really great company to work with. We owned GNC, Worldwide Pure Protein, Malupa, Cow and Gate, Medtrex. So I got to work with all these different concepts in dietary supplements. I became a nutritional biochemist. And there I formulated well over 50 products. We did more than 50 clinical studies. At one time, you know, cut to many years later, after the sale of the company, changes in management, I sat down and I looked at all the products I had made and the sales of those products. It was over $4 billion. And I got just a fraction of that. You know? So at that point, like Neil said, we were friends already. We said, let's just do stuff ourselves. You know, so I found a consulting group. I started working in the Zeolite. Zeolite I actually started working on in the mid-90s when I was even still with Rexall, and we never actually launched a product at Rexall. And it was the work I did myself that eventually led to the first commercial zeolite suspension. And so if you hear zeolite products out there, I'm the category creator. It started with my research. And we were so successful with that first product that we launched in 2004 that it's launched dozens of competitive products. So someone earlier said, I'm looking for a good zeolite product. Well, mine was the first. Mine's like really the only zeolite product that has all the research, all the testimonials. Everyone out there that has another zeolite product, and I'll talk about some of the competitive products that have come out, they're knockoffs. They don't understand the concept, they don't understand the products, they don't understand the mechanisms. You know, I'm just going to throw out the very first knockoff product was a company called Denali. I can talk about it because they're out of business now. But they had a product called Denali Tox. And they advertised, their only advertisement was, it's better than Rick's product. That was their advertisement. That Rick doesn't know what he's talking about. That, in fact, they brought up that I bartended my way through college, and they say he's not really a biochemist, he's a bartender. Which, I'm proud of that. I was a really good bartender. But when you took their product, it turned your teeth green when you took it, which I thought was a negative. I don't know how you got that. And it put 5 people in the hospital the first month with liver failure from aflatoxicosis because they didn't know how to clean their stuff out. And the president of the company got fired. They had to pull the product off the market. That was the first competitive zeolite product they had on the market. So understand when you talk about zeolites for systemic detoxification, I'm the category creator of that. And as Neil said, though, we have a little PTSD because we took it from company to company, and there were lawsuits, and I got out of it altogether for a few years. We got back into it. Neil convinced me in 2010 to get back into it, and then it was the end of 2019, but it was March of 2020 that we launched it. We actually launched the product on March 14, 2020, which was the first day of COVID. Yeah. That was the day where they said, don't go to meetings anymore, don't go out anymore, and I'm sitting in a meeting in Nashville with 300 people. Like, I'm not supposed to be here. This is the definition of a super spreader event. But that's when we launched the product, and as Neil said, we finally got some traction, and then the CEO got indicted on 7 counts of wire fraud. And so that didn't last. And then we took another company, and then finally, as Neil said, in early 2022, he said, let's just do it ourselves. I said, absolutely not. It's tough to run a network marketing company. It's a lot of work, and I was already working 50, 60 hours a week. And Neil's promise to me was just worry about the products, I'll worry about everything else. I still said no, and my wife goes, it's a pretty good idea. We should do it. And she goes, what was wrong with all the other companies? All the other companies, the products were the products, they were my products. The problem was management and ownership. She goes, if you're the managers and the owners, then you've solved that problem. And so, thanks to my wife, we actually started this company. And I am working harder than I've worked in 20 years. I really am.
But not hard enough.
Yeah, it's nonstop. But Neil's, we're doing a great job now moving to a facility. We're doing a lot of hiring. We're making, the whole point is to try to make it so I can do more of this sort of stuff. You know, content creation, working on new products, doing clinical research, the stuff I really want to do, instead of just making product and getting it out there and doing quality control. So as we grow, it's going to get better and better and better and better. We're going to have more to talk about. So I do have a lot to talk about. I'm really going to talk about all the products. I usually teach lecture style where I try to take questions as I go. We're not going to have time for that. So what we said is after lunch, we'll do a Q&A. So we'll take questions after lunch. Hopefully most of what I talk about will answer most of your questions. So it really starts out with the first concept, are you toxic?
Yep.
When I first launched my first Zeolite product, this was a hard topic. People didn't believe it. They denied it. It was a guy, I used to have a slide showing this guy, and it was Fargo, North Dakota. He said, I'm not toxic, I live in a pristine environment, there ain't no toxins in me. As he's telling me this, there was a crop duster dusting the field behind him. I said, do you have any idea what's in that? The fact is, there's no place on Earth that is free of toxins. We've done core samples of the ice in Antarctica and found man-made toxins. Anywhere the wind blows, anywhere the water flows, it's carrying toxins. Right now in the jet stream, traveling around the Earth, is over 40 metric tons of toxic compounds. Traveling all over the place. Doesn't matter if it comes from Canada or China or Detroit. It's going all over the place, and we're all exposed to it. So let's talk about the fact that we know we're toxic. Where do they come from? How many people here eat? How many people drink? How many people breathe? Who's not going to raise their hand no matter what I say? The fact is, everything we do introduces these toxins into our body. And different toxins do different things. I'll talk about exactly what toxins do, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. What we're exposed to through our lives, through the food, the water, the air. The fact is, we're born with a lot of toxins. There was a study conducted really about 20 years ago, and it was published by the Environmental Working Group, an advocacy group in DC, where they looked at umbilical cord blood from newborns. And they found over 200 toxic compounds in the umbilical cord blood of newborns. Over 70 of those toxins were potentially carcinogenic or cancer-causing. So I know we love our moms, but she started it out, you know? We're born with all these toxic compounds. So that's what people talk about when we talk about the zeolite. Can it be used by pregnant nursing women? I said it should be used by pregnant nursing women. It's going to cut down the toxic exposure to your unborn baby, and of course, even in breastfeeding, we've done studies in breastfeeding mothers where it cuts down toxic exposure that's expressed in the breast milk, especially volatile organic compounds. So, what do toxins do? And I do a whole lecture on this concept of competition. I don't have a lot of time for that today, but just think about this. We have a lot of metabolic processes in the body where metals are part of that process. What we call healthy metals: calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, sodium, potassium, even in micro quantities, manganese, boron, copper. These metals are necessary for life, for biochemistry. What happens though is when they get competition. Heavy metals are toxic because they compete with the good metals. Mercury, lead, cadmium, arsenic, tin, bismuth, aluminum, antimony can displace the healthy metals and slow down or eliminate normal metabolic processes. That's what they actually do. So the heavy metals can bind to enzymes, disrupt normal cell metabolism, and we know sometimes it's just where the metals are. Okay? So we have natural detoxification pathways in the body. And I can talk about my favorite detoxification pathways, but I don't have time for that today. But people have heard me talk about phase 2 human glucuronidation, right? It's my favorite pathway. Do you guys have a favorite pathway? Yeah? I'm losing them, Doug. I'm losing them. We have all sorts of detoxification pathways in our body, and when we talk about how come some people are more toxic or less toxic, some of us are good excretors. Some of us are good at getting heavy metals and volatile organic compounds out of our body. Some of us are poor excretors. Regardless, it doesn't matter if you're a good excretor or a poor excretor, our exposure is higher than our ability to excrete. We're always going to have a net positive body burden of toxins. So what happens to those toxins we can't get rid of? Well, our body hides it, it sequesters them. That's what I'm going to talk about now. So these are all the different heavy metals, that can lead to disease depending on where they're sequestered. Here's an example of competition, though. Does anyone know what ATP is?
Adenosine triphosphate.
Adenosine triphosphate. And what does ATP do? This is the energy currency of the body. When your body needs energy, it spends ATP to do it. This is adenosine, a nitrogenous base, and there's 1, 2, 3 phosphate groups, PO4s. Phosphate groups are highly negative. So you have a negative, another negative. So this is a really strained bond, 2 negatives together. Now you have a third negative. This bond has a ton of energy. It's highly strained. It's trying to pull apart. It's trying to pull itself apart. And it's stabilized by magnesium. The reason that doesn't come apart is normally magnesium will bind here, a positively charged magnesium that stabilizes that negative charge. Active ATP is actually called MgATP. The problem with this is that mercury can displace magnesium. And the mercury, when it goes there, it doesn't let go. So the ATP becomes unavailable. So what happens if we can get rid of that mercury? And I have a little zeolite cage like this. Gobble, gobble, gobble. There goes your heavy metal. Now magnesium can get to its binding site. And that activates cellular energy. So one of the things we talk about, and you can feel this, if you have more ATP, you feel it. One of the things we talk about with people using the product is they feel like they have more energy during the day. They're sleeping better at night. This is ATP activation. And it's very simple to see. You get the sludge out of the body, things start to work better. I give another example, zinc finger proteins. Who knows what a zinc finger protein is? Doug, of course. Doug listens to them. So zinc finger proteins are a family of proteins. They're called zinc finger proteins because there's a single zinc atom in the center of the protein that holds the shape of that protein and allows it to function. Now, proteins and enzymes work because of their three-dimensional structure. It's like a key has to be a certain shape to fit the lock. If it's a different shape, it doesn't work. So zinc finger proteins are necessary for cellular division. Every time a cell divides, zinc finger proteins come in to help copy the DNA. This is important if you get a cut, a scrape, a broken bone. It's vital for immune system function. If you get a cold and you need to make more white blood cells, you need zinc finger proteins to make those cells. This is why when you get a cold, you might suck on a zinc lozenge or take a zinc vitamin. More zinc finger proteins, more white blood cells. It all makes sense now, right? The problem is zinc can be displaced, usually by arsenic. If arsenic displaces zinc for zinc finger proteins, arsenic is smaller than zinc, changes the shape of the protein, it stops working. So what happens even with low dose arsenic toxicity? You don't heal well, your immune system shuts down, your hair can fall out. It's because your cells aren't dividing because you don't have zinc finger proteins. So one of the things we find when we take the product is we're getting rid of arsenic, zinc finger protein metabolism goes up, and you heal better, and your immune system works better. Some people say they have thicker hair, stronger skin, thicker skin. I have to have thick skin. I work with Neil. But the fact is, we had a testimonial earlier on. Someone said, "I got a cut the other day, and it healed overnight." Your product heals cuts. My product doesn't heal cuts. Your body heals cuts. It's very cool. Have you ever watched that process of healing? It's fascinating. It's amazing. But you get the gunk out of the body, and the body does what it's supposed to do. And that's my mantra. You guys know my mantra. A cleaner, healthier body fixes itself. I'm going to have everyone say this. A cleaner, healthier body fixes itself. So whenever we talk about these testimonials, it's not what the product is doing. It's what your body, this miracle machine is doing. Because we got the gunk out of the way. We cleaned it out. It was an oil change, a fluid change. I hate to say oil change, and people start asking a specific question about what oil. 40 weight, 50 weight. The fact is, a cleaner, healthier body fixes itself. and avoids that competition, okay? So then I started talking about this before. I realized I had a slide for this, so I stopped myself. But what normally happens when you're exposed to toxins? The first thing is barrier and elimination. Your skin is a barrier against toxic exposure. Even your digestive tract is a barrier against toxic exposure. You can eat this stuff, and the lining of your intestines, your stomach itself, stops that stuff from getting in. And it's kind of hard to understand, but when things are in your digestive tract, for all practical purposes, they're not in your body until they get in your bloodstream. So you can actually eliminate stuff out right through your feces, okay? But if it gets in your body, the next thing is transformation. That's what the liver does. The liver takes toxins and tries to transform those toxins to make them more water soluble so you can get rid of them. If your body can't get rid of those toxins, it then has to sequester them. It has to hide those toxins. And it usually hides them in what we call metabolically inert tissue, usually fat or bone. Depending on where those toxins go, it tells you what kind of side effects you get from those toxins. Mercury loves to hang out on the fatty sheaths around the nerves, so mercury is a neurotoxin. Aluminum loves to go into the brain. You know, it is a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. Lead loves to displace calcium in the bone. It is a risk factor for osteoporosis and osteopenia. You know, so that's another thing we found. People who've taken the zeolite for long periods of time and have lowered the lead in their bodies have higher bone density scores. As the lead comes out, calcium can go and redeposit into the bone and strengthens the bone. That's a side effect of getting the lead out of the body. You got the lead out, yeah. He was with me. Now, all of us have a body burden of toxins. So one problem is it's really hard to tell what the body burden is. In fact, there's only one way to tell what your body burden is. It's cremation. And you can only do it once. So, now we have actually done studies where we've cremated bodies to look at heavy metal content, and we've seen from different parts of the world, different parts of the country, what sort of heavy metals can be found as a body burden. But we do all sorts of stuff. We do heavy metal analysis through urine, through hair, through blood, through muscle, through biopsy, to try to find out who has the most heavy metals and what can be done about it. But it is hard to tell what your body burden is. Just know that you have one. So how do you decrease your body burden? How do you detoxify? And this is where I get really upset. You approach someone new and you say, you have something that detoxifies. And when people think about detoxification, all they think about is going to the bathroom. That's it. And for some reason, we've taught people and we've learned that detox means going to the bathroom. Peeing, pooping, or sweating. And that is true. You're getting things out of your bodies. You are detoxing along with it. But only certain things will normally go through your body if you're taking a laxative or a diuretic or infrared saunas, which increase sweating. You know, you'll get rid of some toxins. But there's also a lot of issues with those. You know, for example, senna-based teas are a big choice for people that want to detox, especially digestive detox. What that does is it relaxes peristalsis, so you go to the bathroom. That's fine a couple times a week, okay? You take it before bed, you wake up in the morning, you have a moving experience. The problem is that those can become addictive. The body gets used to it and you become chronically constipated when you don't get it. There's actually a condition called encopresis, which is chronic constipation followed by explosive diarrhea, and it's almost unique to people that take these sort of laxatives. You know, things like senna-based teas. Not a great way to live, you know? I'll repeat that. Chronic constipation followed by explosive diarrhea. Neil said I would say 7 syllable words, but I just said diarrhea 3 times in the last minute. All right, so these are issues, you know. Detoxification is not just going to the bathroom. Most of these toxins are in your tissue. They're sequestered, they're hiding. How do we get these things systemically out of the body? And like I said, there's lots and lots of different ways. What we found that's more specific is this concept of chelation. Who's heard of chelation therapy? So in most cases, chelation therapy is using some sort of molecule that will bind to a toxin, mostly heavy metals, and remove it from the body. But there's issues with chelation therapy. In fact, the biggest chelator out there is EDTA. EDTA became really popular during World War II because not only were we painting ships with lead-based paints, we had motor pools that had lead batteries. So a lot of soldiers and sailors had lead poisoning. And so they started giving them EDTA via IV, chelation, to pull out the lead. EDTA is a cool molecule. It looks like a hand, and every fingertip has a little bit of a negative charge. Altogether, it's -2. So it looks for anything with a +2 charge, it grabs onto it, and then you get rid of it. You urinate it, pass out through the kidneys and the bladder. So lead has a +2 charge. The problem is, a lot of good things have a +2 charge, like calcium, magnesium. So when you're removing lead through EDTA chelation, you don't get it all out because you're removing calcium, magnesium that has to constantly be added back into the patient. And by concentration, you never get the lead out. That was the joke. So it's not specific. That's one of the issues. The other issue is it really has to be given IV. It's a huge dose. It's hard on the kidneys and hard on the bladder. I'm a fan of EDTA chelation for acute exposure. Someone gets an acute lead exposure, definitely go through hemodialysis, go through EDTA chelation and get rid of that. But it's not something that you want to take just for general health or wellness. All right? So we found basically a new approach to chelation and clathration. That's using zeolites. Okay? So what are zeolites? Zeolites are natural compounds. They're formed over thousands of years, usually from volcanic eruptions. When a volcano erupts, the lava and the ash goes into salt water and it forms these cage-like structures. In fact, it's called zeolite because the first time it was identified was a Swedish scientist took some powdered rock and he heated it up and it boiled. Steam came out. That was a surprise. So he called it zeolite, which literally means boiling rock or boiling stone. Okay, so we found out that zeolites have two really incredible properties. It has a cage-like structure with a lot of space inside, and it has a negative charge, one of the few negatively charged minerals found in nature. And because of that cage-like structure, negative charge, it has the ability to draw to itself and trap within itself a variety of positively charged compounds. Now, there are 49 different naturally occurring zeolites. So zeolites found in nature. We separate the zeolites based on their basically cage-like structure, their framework. Different zeolites do different things and like different things because of the pore sizes and the distribution of charges. So there's a family of zeolites called spicule or needle-like zeolites. There's an example, scolasite. But asbestos is a spicule type zeolite. So if you look up, when I first launched my first product, I said zeolite, and there's some studies in cancer, people looked up zeolite cancer. Zeolite causes cancer. Asbestos is zeolite, causes mesothelioma. We don't use asbestos, okay? And we're certainly not breathing it in. But with those spicule type zeolites, they form little pins, and if you breathe them in, those pins get stuck in the lungs, and they can cause all sorts of issues like mesothelioma. Then you have equine or grape-like zeolites. That's chabazite. Anyone ever have a salt lamp? Yeah. So that's chabazite. It's basically what they call a grape-like or a cluster-like zeolite. And when you heat it up, like with a bulb, a light bulb, it actually draws toxins into itself from the air and it deodorizes your room. So they use it for, they say it's good for energy, but also deodorizes or cleans out smells and things from the room. That's a zeolite. Then we have sheet-like zeolites. So we use a zeolite called clinoptilolite. Clinoptilolite is a sheet-like zeolite. It's been used for over 800 years in traditional medicine. There's whole societies in India called geophasics that have eaten this every day for the last 800 years for general health. It's highly abundant, it's completely safe and non-toxic, has GRAS status, generally recognized as safe by the US FDA, and it's really, really good at differentiating the good metals from the bad metals. It loves mercury and lead and cadmium and arsenic, and it hates calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium. It's really, really good at differentiating the good and the bad. And I'll talk about that in the framework structure. So those are the pros. What are the cons? Well, this is where I came into my research. So I was first approached with a company in the mid-90s that was trying to use a zeolite product. The product is still in the market. It's called Megamins. And it's a capsule with some zeolite in it, and vitamin C and some other things. It's sold all over Europe. And they asked me what I thought of it. And I said, we have problems. Zeolite from nature, when you first get it into your lab or manufacturing facility, it's a rough granular sand. It's anywhere from 5 microns to 40 microns to 200 microns. And I said, at this size, it's only going to stay in the digestive tract. You're not going to have a systemic detoxifier. It's just too big. So size matters. It does. You're allowed to laugh anytime you want. So I realized it was way too big. It was going to have to be smaller if we're going to have a systemic product. And then mine zeolites have toxins in them. In fact, the first commercial zeolite product in the United States was called Detox. It was launched in 1972, and it was a powder, and it was pulled off the market because the FDA analyzed it and it had tons of mercury in it. And they said, how could this be good for you? You're ingesting all this mercury. And the fact is, the zeolites have a ton of toxins in them, because that's what zeolites do. When water flows through that mine site, when air blows through that mine site, zeolites sucking up toxins from the environment. It's nature's filter. And when you get zeolite from the mine site, it's full of all sorts of heavy metals and volatile organic compounds. Now, I'm not saying other zeolite products that don't clean them out are bad for you. And in fact, like I said, there's societies that have been eating this stuff for hundreds of years. But the zeolite is so good at holding on to those toxins, it's probably not going to be released in your body. But if you don't clean it out, how good is that zeolite? How much space does it have? So I realized that we were going to have to clean it out to make it active, to make it more beneficial. And that was the biggest issue. It limits its surface area because there's a lack of usable space. So first, I want to talk about how highly abundant it is. So this is our zeolite mine site. All of this is zeolite. These are people. You see the size. Okay? So we have over 300 million metric tons of the zeolite. So you guys say, are we going to run out? We're not going to run out. Okay? Get as much out there as you can. We're not going to run out of it. Okay? I go through right now, about half a ton a year with our current sales. So we could go much, much higher and not run out of this stuff. Now, there are zeolite mine sites, clinoptilite mine sites all over the world. I analyzed 20 different mine sites when I chose this one as our source. And basically, I was looking for the cleanest zeolite I could find that was the easiest to clean out, that had the most consistent product. Because you don't get just zeolite in this, you get feldspar and quartz and some other stuff. So I wanted to get the most amount of clinoptilite I could whenever I bought it, that I didn't have to separate stuff out and clean it out. So this particular mine site is in New Mexico. That's our source. It's a US-based source, and it is the cleanest zeolite that I could find, and that's our starting material. Okay? So here's clinoptilite's three-dimensional structure, and I point this out because it is a framework structure. It's repeating 8-sided and 10-sided pores, 8-sided and 10-sided rings. If you did a space-filling molecule of this, you'd see that 2 sides of the cube have no pores at all, 2 sides of the cube only have small pores, and 2 sides of the cube have small and big pores. That's important because of this pore distribution. It loves small, highly charged metals. The smaller the metal and the higher the charge, the greater the affinity for the zeolite. And what basically happens is positively charged compounds can get in, and if it's the right compound, it doesn't get out. So this is just an example of cationic exchanges. These sizes are not indicative of the actual sizes of the molecules. I'm just trying to show what cationic exchange looks like. So there's a lead exchanging for a potassium, there's a mercury exchanging for a calcium, there's an ammonium exchanging for a sodium, here's an arsenic exchanging for a calcium. That process will happen over and over and over again as the zeolite cube goes around your body. And what happens is eventually the highest affinity metals get stuck and the lower affinity metals come out. Eventually the zeolite is full. I'm doing air quotes, but I'm holding a microphone. I say full, it's not really full. What happens is it winds up with the net neutral charge across the surface of the zeolite. Once that happens, you pee it out, you urinate it out. None of the zeolite stays in your body. It is 100% excreted, every time. We've actually done radio-labeled studies with both Dippy and Technetium. I've done it to myself, where I just laid on a table for hours so they can see where it went in my body. It doesn't deposit anywhere in your body, it doesn't stay in your body. 100% of this is excreted. Usually within 4 to 5 hours, depending on your physical activity, how much you eat or drink, and how often you go to the bathroom. Okay?
There we go.
Oh, yeah. This just looks at some sizes of some of the metals I'm talking about. As I said, the smaller the metal, the higher the charge, the greater the affinity. And like I said, mercury, arsenic, lead, tin, bismuth, aluminum, antimony are small and highly charged. And the zeolite loves them. The good stuff, potassium's huge, has a huge van der Waals radius. Sodium, magnesium, calcium, they will move into and out of the zeolite, but the zeolite doesn't like them. It doesn't hold on to them. It's not a high affinity metal, so it exchanges those out. Another thing is, the smaller the metal, the deeper inside the zeolite framework structure it can get, and it gets trapped. Okay, it has what they call more points of coordination, where it can get stuck inside the zeolite. And so you see mercury goes in there, gets stuck. Potassium barely does, calcium barely does, it kind of bounces up. Less points of coordination. Now, I talked about metals, but we also have volatile organic compounds. And it's kind of funny, when I first started researching this, people talked about other toxins. I said, I'm just focused on heavy metals. Well, what about volatile organics? They say volatile organics can be removed by zeolite. And I said, that's BS. Volatile organics are huge. They're way too big to fit inside the pores of the zeolite. And then I found this paper. It was published in 1996 in the journal Actor Crystallography. You guys all read Actor Crystallography, right? It's a really great Swedish journal. So it's on your coffee table. So when I was getting the zeolite from the mine site, and we actually go through the activation process, I was measuring what was coming off it. And tons of volatile organic compounds were coming off it. So it didn't make sense to me. How is the zeolite holding on to this stuff? Well, this paper shows how it works. So first, volatile organic compounds have a flat structure, what's called a benzene ring structure. 6 carbons, completely flat. And that's the center of all volatile organic compounds. That's what makes those compounds so dangerous. Okay? They can slide into your phospholipid membranes. They slide into your DNA, into the turns of your DNA, because they're flat. It's called intercalation. It intercalates in your DNA, and when your DNA tries to divide, it can't, because the volatile organic compound is there, and that leads to cancer. That's what makes it carcinogenic. Okay? So, that flat structure can lay on the side of the zeolite, on the flat cube of the zeolite, and starts to exchange electrons with it. Once that happens, and those extra electrons get exchanged with the zeolite, it takes on a slight positive charge and draws another zeolite cage to the other side of it. It makes a toxic sandwich, or a toxic Oreo, which is fascinating to me, because what allows it to be trapped is that flat structure, which is the same thing that makes it so dangerous. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. The properties that make it deadly are the same properties that allow the zeolite to take it out of your body.
Wow.
Okay? Very, very, very cool. So let's talk about the manufacturing process. There's 2 basic steps. There's actually 30 steps to my manufacturing process, but there's 2 basic families of the steps. There's micronization and activation. Okay? First step is micronization. So we start with raw zeolite from the mine site. And most places say they micronize their product or they crush their product. They do a process called chelation or meshing. So they either put it through a little mesh screen to kind of break it up, or they put it into what they call a ball mill. It's basically a clothes dryer that has a bunch of ball bearings in it, and it tosses it, and the ball bearings crush the powder. But you have no way of knowing how small it's actually getting. You really can't control its particle size. We use a proprietary process with high pressure and centrifugation to crush the zeolite over and over and over again. And the exit for that process is 1 micron, which means that our average particle size has to be smaller than 1 micron. Now, to get through your digestive tract in your bloodstream, it has to be smaller than 5 microns, certainly smaller than 2 microns. Anything smaller than 2 microns can easily be absorbed from your digestive tract into your bloodstream. Our stuff is smaller than 1 micron and goes all the way down to about 450 nanometers. Okay, so about like half a micron, 0.49 microns. Now that's important. The size is important. I showed you the size of the zeolite before. There's actually a competitive company out there that says their product's better because they micronize their stuff down to 0.9 nanometers. You saw the structure of the zeolite. 0.9 nanometers is the size of one hole in the cage. How can the whole zeolite cage be the size of that hole? How can a prison be the size of the space between the bars? It's not possible. So it shows you they don't understand the structure of the zeolite, how the zeolite works. So when we look at our average particle size, there's about 10,000 pores to a side in our 1 micron cage. That's still a lot of space, a lot of surface area to pull in toxins. In fact, when you look at our average, 1 drop of our average zeolite at 1 micron, at our 1 micron size, has 90 square meters of surface area. How many atoms of mercury can you fit in 90 square meters?
At least 10.
Yeah. The answer is a bunch. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. Okay? So that's our micronization process. Let me just say this too. So I was criticized early on that by other zeolite producers that, in their micronization process, they destroy the zeolite. They destroy the zeolite cage. No, we don't. We don't. It's really, really, really hard to break up a zeolite, to break it down to its constituents. The zeolites are formed in a volcanic eruption. It takes temperatures greater than 800 degrees Fahrenheit for more than 8 hours to try to melt the zeolite, try to break it apart. It's also amphoteric, so it exists just as well in strong acid and strong base. You can't break this stuff down. It's really, 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 really strong. When we talk about micronization, we're just making smaller cages. We're not breaking it apart. My best example is a diamond. Diamond is one of the hardest substances known to man. And yet you can break it down. You can crush a diamond. You can crush it right down to diamond dust. And every particle of diamond dust is still a diamond. It's a tiny diamond with the same crystal structure and all the same properties. Diamond dust is used in diamond drills, diamond bits. It's used on the needles and turntables. Diamond dust has a lot of benefits, a lot of uses. It's still a diamond. It's just a really, really small diamond. That's what we do with the zeolite. We crush it down to such a small size that it's a tiny, tiny cage that you can still go around your body and function, and it's still the same as the big zeolite cage. Please take a message. So we talk about activation. As I said, the zeolite's dirty when it comes to us. We need to clean it out. So we have our activation process. It starts with heat. We have large reaction vessels. We use ultra purified water, what they call it 18 mega ohm or better water. It's super, super pure water. And then we heat it up. And the first thing that comes off are those volatile organic compounds. And we measure those compounds that come off because we're kind of curious what's in the zeolite, batch to batch. And this is funny too. So one batch, we're measuring the volatiles that come off, and I couldn't identify them. The computer didn't know what that peak was. So we sent it out to a third party for identification, and it came back as diesel fuel exhaust. Now this is fascinating because there's a company in Australia that makes the zeolite, and they say we don't need to activate it like Rick does because we have a pristine environment, and so our zeolite's clean. Ours is perfectly clean. So you can Google map this mine site, and it's right next to a nickel mine and a copper mine. So you already know there's issues. But I don't care how clean your zeolite is to start with, diesel fuel exhaust, the mining equipment that's mining the zeolite is creating toxins that the zeolite is sucking up. So there's no way around it. If you're not cleaning it out, that's in your product. Okay? So we first get rid of volatile organics, and then we use a process where we force cationic exchange. And I've said this before, what we're really doing with the heat and the natural acids is we're forcing the zeolite cage just to separate a little bit. We're bending the bars of the cage to try to pull those toxic heavy metals out of it and exchange them for things like calcium, magnesium. That's what the activation process is all about. Get rid of all those high affinity metals so that the zeolite itself is more active. Okay? Then we have a filtration step that eventually leads to the product.
Can I add something now?
Yeah.
So you're going to hear something for the first time. It's always fun to come to a meeting and hear something for the first time, right?
Okay.
So, everybody comes up to us and says, well, this is a zeolite this is zeolite just like your zeolite. It says zeolite on the bottle, and this is zeolite. And so we have all this comparison. We've recently trademarked the name Detoxolite. And on your bottles will be, as we start redoing the labels, it will be called Detoxolite, not zeolite. And that's going to be specialized because of the micronization and activation that we do that nobody else has figured out yet. So
We haven't told anyone this, so yeah, so this
this is the first time we're talking about it in public. So.
Is there a concern of detoxing too fast?
I'll talk about that.
Okay.
I said, I'm probably going to answer most of your questions, so that's why I said we'll take questions in the afternoon. So yeah, so people have been saying for years, if you have a proprietary micronization activation process, why don't you brand it? And I don't think like that, so I didn't. So, but Neil does and Doug does. So we actually branded it. We have a trademark. We own a trademark now for Detoxolite, so that'll be in all the bottles. That's our micronized activated zeolite. So you'll know what differentiates it from everybody else. I'll also say this, another company came to me and they have a powdered zeolite in a tub with a scoop in it, and they said, you're only getting a few grams of zeolite in your stuff. We get 100 grams in this. How is your stuff better than my stuff? Do you guys know that aspirin comes from willow bark? I can take the bark off of 15 willow trees, grind it up and hand it to you, or hand you a single aspirin. Which would you prefer? Because we micronize and activate the zeolite, it has so much more surface area, it's so much more active. You don't need a lot. In fact, you're going to hear testimonials where people give like 1 drop at a time because people are so toxic. Even that 1 drop is enough to show mobilization of toxic heavy metals and volatiles. It is incredibly powerful for just a few drops of this. So this is a product. The only thing left in this bottle is micronized activated zeolite and a little calcium, magnesium, and water.
$16,000 water.
It's Neil said, we got a new water system. We just had to pay $16,000 for it. So he said, the water, $16,000 water. Neil has the checkbook. So yes. So now we have lots and lots of claims about the product. We know it detoxifies. We know what people talk about all the things it does for them. But the legal claims we can make is it detoxifies the body by removing toxin and heavy metals. It supports a strong immune system, and it balances the pH levels of the body. We can also say it's an antioxidant because it's a different type of antioxidant because it captures whole free radicals, small free radicals that can fit into it. Those are the legal claims on the product. Now, we've done 15 clinical studies on the product. We took 3 of them and published as a single clinical study in a peer-reviewed journal. We have given most of these at scientific conferences. I'm going to point out some of the key ones.
They're all available on the back office.
Yeah, all the studies are available on the back office. Everyone's like taking pictures and stuff, but we have if you go to scientific support, and all of what I'm saying now is actually in my white paper. So if you want to just read my white paper, I'm pretty proud of it. You can just go ahead and read that. It's going to talk about everything I'm talking about now, the history of zeolites, why we micronize and activate, what it actually means. But the study that was published in a peer-reviewed journal is kind of a seminal study because it looks at healthy individuals where we measure urine excretion of heavy metals prior to the study, and then we measure it day 1, 4, 7, and then weekly thereafter to look at heavy metals coming off these people. And in the healthy population, we saw an increase of about 7-fold heavy metal excretion with the zeolite. Now, this is important for a couple reasons. First of all, there's no route from your mouth to your urine that doesn't go through your body, through your bloodstream, through your bladder, and through your kidneys. Okay? So if you see an increase in the heavy metal excretion through the urine, you know it's being absorbed in your bloodstream. Okay? We've also captured the zeolite in the bloodstream people using it at the nanometer range. So at the nanoliter range. No one else has done that. And we've looked at every other zeolite product. We can't find it in the urine. We can't find it in the bloodstream. Because, like I said, they're not micronizing. They're certainly not activating their products. That study is published. It clearly shows the zeolite gets in and detoxes. The coolest study we did was in West Virginia coal miners. This study was a 84-day study. It was a double-blind, placebo-controlled study, and we learned so much in this study. So first of all, we said, where can we find a group of really toxic guys? So West Virginia coal miners, we know that they're exposed to toxins all the time, okay? In this case, we looked at both hair and urine. Now the hair, we chose to use chest hair, which eliminated most women from the study. I don't get 2 laughs out of that. We think women, and then he said most women. So the reason we chose chest hair is because the hair on the head is also exposed to the environment, so we couldn't tell if the heavy metals were coming from the environment or from their bodies through excretion. So we had them shave their chest at the beginning of the study, and then at 3 months, at the end of the study, we had them shave their chest again and look at the heavy metals in the hair. This was a double-blind, placebo-controlled study. We had actually what we call a negative placebo effect, which I love. So people know what a placebo effect is. You know, in most cases, you have to basically say, certain people are going to say your product works because they just believe it does. And then you have to kind of back that out of the calculations, how much is placebo effect and how much is active. In this case, we had a negative placebo effect where nearly every patient on the placebo said, your stuff sucks, your stuff may be worse, you know? And of course, it was just a placebo, it didn't do anything, you know? But it clearly didn't get any better. Couple things in this study that I love. First is we found out that it doesn't matter how you take the product. Get it in your body and it's gonna work. So we told these guys, take it any way you want, take it directly in your mouth, put in your food or drink, but be consistent in the way you take it and tell us how you took it. Because we want to see if maybe someone took it in food, they didn't have the same benefits. So there was a guy who put it in his mashed potatoes every night. There was a guy that put it in his on a steak or whatever. He put it. A lot of guys just put it in their mouth. There was one guy every night before bed had a glass of scotch and put it in his scotch. And everyone had the same benefits as long as they got the product. So in this case, we saw as much as a 15-fold increase in heavy metal excretion in the coal miner study. They also reported, every one of them, more energy during the day, better sleep quality at night, improved cognitive ability. So that a lot of them said it was like a fog lifted off their brain. And the thing that really surprised me was improved visual acuity. Eyesight improved, especially night vision and glare recovery. So we started thinking about that. Why would vision improve? And we found that as liver function improves, because we're taking all this pressure off the liver produces glutathione, which is the major antioxidant that protects the eye. Higher glutathione levels, you wind up with better vision. You know, so this is just another downstream effect of a cleaner, healthier body. Isn't that really cool? Yeah. So really, really fascinating. And then the other thing we found is by measuring toxins over time through 84 days, we really identify the affinity range of the zeolite, what it likes more. So for example, we saw mercury come out right away, tons of mercury, and a little bit of everything else. By the end of the first week, there was less mercury. Now we started seeing arsenic and cadmium. You know, then after that, we started seeing like lead and tin and bismuth. By week 3 or 4, we started seeing mercury again spike up. And so what we think is happening is that the zeolite's going around the blood and the lymph and it's taking out all sorts of toxins that are available to it. But over time, as you remove all the circulating toxins, it creates what we call a concentration gradient. You're removing all these toxins from the blood and the lymph, so the toxins in the tissue start to get released.
Yeah.
It's like a vacuum. It tries to maintain homeostasis between the two tissues. And so then, at week 3 or 4, you start seeing mercury again, because now the tissues are releasing those toxins. Isn't that cool? Yeah. And you can measure it over time. We graphed it over time. There's mercury, oh, there's mercury again. And it was like clockwork with everybody, you know? We started cycling through the different toxins over time. And we could clearly see what was being removed over time. We did electrolyte levels. This is important too, because someone says, how do I know when to stop taking it? Well, my answer is, did you stop eating, drinking, and breathing? As long as you're eating, drinking, and breathing, you're exposed to toxins, you need to keep taking it. The concern was, well, I'm not that toxic, and I've been taking your product, I know it's removing all this stuff. Won't it eventually start to remove the good stuff? And the answer is no, it won't. It doesn't matter how much you take, It's not going to lower your nutritional status of the good metals. And we did electrolyte analysis, and we've done it over and over and over again. And we found that those things don't change, they actually improve over time. In fact, they've been feeding farm animals zeolite, clenoptilolite for over 80 years in the United States because it lowers the risk of aflatoxicosis, liver failure due from fungus. So there's two fungus, Aspergillus parasiticus and Aspergillus
Yeah, I
flavus.
told you he does that.
But they make a toxin called aflatoxin that can destroy your liver, just destroy your liver. And this is, the aflatoxin is usually nuts and beans and things like that. And it's a lot of times found in animal food. And so they give the zeolite to the animals to cut down on aflatoxicosis and protect their livers. So that's been done, like I said, for 80 years. But there was a concern in the 80s and 90s that, well, we're giving the zeolite, is it removing healthy stuff like calcium, magnesium? So they did huge studies in ruminants, goats, cows, and sheep. And they gave them all the same diet where they normally would have gotten, and half got the zeolite and half didn't. And the surprising thing is not only did it not lower the nutritional status from the animals that were taking the zeolite, it actually increased the nutritional status. It became a nutritional enabler because we're going to go back to the word competition. You remove the toxin and heavy metals that are competing for uptake with the good stuff, and you wind up getting more of the good stuff. So not only does it clean out your body, it makes all your other supplements more valuable. You're getting better value from the food you're eating and from the supplements you're taking as a nutritional enabler. Isn't that cool? That's cool stuff, okay? So did Lisa mention earlier about working out and is this helping her work out? We did this, the biggest study we've done to date was over 300 people. It was exercise recovery. We had two big groups. One was what I call weekend warriors. Guys like me, I just work out every once in a while. My wife would love me to go to Orange Theory with her. She works out 4 days a week. And so this is our morning. She gets up to 6 o'clock, she goes around and does stuff around the house, works out from 7 to 8, gets home at 8:15, wakes me up. She's had a whole day. I used to work out a lot. When she met me, I was ripped. I was really, I was in great shape. Like, what happened to you? But the fact is, we did a study with weekend warriors and then with performance athletes, people that can really see a difference. And across the spectrum, everyone on the product said they could work out longer, their performance improved, and they recovered faster when they were using the zeolite. And we think there's a lot of reasons for that, probably mostly due to pH balancing, because zeolite does actually balance pH. Through a variety of different mechanisms, and lactic acid buildup and pH issues are the biggest reason for recovery issues after working out. So that was a great study. So we did, we did pH balancing with salivary pH. Let's see. Then we did in vitro analysis. So we talked about volatile organic compounds. So the question was, what does the zeolite like when it comes to volatile organic compounds? And we also looked at depleted uranium. Do you guys know what depleted uranium is? So it's so funny how we never want to throw anything away. So we get depleted uranium from nuclear power plants. And they said, what do we do with this stuff? Well, it's incredibly dense. It's very heavy. So the Army uses it in munitions. They put it in bombs. So for the same space, it weighs more. It makes the bombs heavier. So anywhere you are where munitions go off, you're exposed to depleted uranium. So we had guys coming back from fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they had very high levels of radioactive uranium in their bodies. And so we did an in vitro analysis and an in vivo analysis, and the zeolite loves the depleted uranium, it just sucks it right up. And so these guys did really, really well when they used the product. So when it comes to volatile organic compounds, it just so happens that some of the most prevalent ones have the highest affinity for the zeolite. So formaldehyde, dichlorobenzene, toluene, methylene chloride, benzene, all the purines, the phthalates, all the stuff you've heard are so toxic and so carcinogenic. All these volatile organic compounds are all absorbed by the zeolite. The zeolite loves them and can pull them right out of the body.
Fair.
So, go back to the Cell Defender is the original colloidal suspension of zeolite. So I don't like to call it liquid zeolite. People call it liquid. It's not a liquid. It's a colloidal suspension. It's a microparticle suspended in water. That's why you have to shake it up too. okay? It is really the only micronized and activated zeolite on the market. I don't care what anyone else says, no one else has micronized and activated a zeolite. It's proven safe and effective for long-term use, and it's subject to more than 14 clinical studies. No one else can make any of these claims. And you know, it annoys me sometimes because distributors actually come to me and say, what do you think of this product? What do you think of that product? And they want my analysis of every other competitive product out there. I can tell you it's not my product, okay? I'm the category creator for colloidal suspension of zeolite, for systemic detoxification. And the proof is in the pudding. If you go to their websites and look at their content, it's my content. They quote me, they quote my books, they use my published research to support their stuff. And you know, they say that imitation is the finest form of flattery. I'm not flattered. I told you, the first competitive product put 5 people in the hospital and turned your teeth green. You know, so no, I'm not flattered. This is the product people should be using. Once they hear about it, they certainly want to make it the product they use. Okay? So how do you use it? People have all sorts of different dosages for this. What I usually recommend is to start out with what I call the detox dose. 10 drops 4 times a day. 10 drops 4 times a day, drink plenty of water. The only issues we've ever seen with people with this product, well, I'll say the only issues for the general population is dehydration. So you have to drink plenty of water to maximize the use of the product, okay? 10 drops 4 times a day is a detox dose. After the first month, you can lower to what we call the maintenance dose, 10 drops twice a day. Right? Every 6 to 12 months, repeat the detox dose. Because like I said, as your tissue starts to release all those excess toxins, you want to up the dose a little bit to sweep it out again. Okay? Now, there are people that are really poor excretors that are highly, highly, highly toxic. And they will have issues taking the product. Sometimes they call it a detox crisis or a wasting crisis. What happens is they start taking the product, the zeolite starts pulling out toxins, and their body says, woohoo, we're getting rid of this stuff. And their tissues all start to release it at once. And they can have chronic fatigue, flu-like symptoms. And it's I gotta tell you, in the general population, it's less than 1/10 of 1%, or about 1 in 1,000 people. And yet, it's like all you guys. You know, you attract these people. You attract these highly toxic people. So I constantly hear about it. So if that happens, if someone has an effect like that when they start taking a regular dose, they have 2 choices. Keep taking a high dose, drink plenty of water, and get through it. They will get through it as their bodies get rid of these toxins. The other thing you can do, what most people choose to do, is greatly reduce their use. Get back to just 1 drop, sometimes just put 1 or 2 drops in a bottle of water and drink it through the day. Low doses and build up over time. The worst thing they can do is stop taking the product. Because imagine that, you just took it, you've shaken up your body, all these toxins down in circulation. So someone goes, I took your product, I felt terrible. I stopped taking it 3 weeks ago, I still feel terrible. You shouldn't have stopped. You shouldn't have stopped. You got to keep taking the product to get this stuff out of your body. The worst thing they can do if that happens is stop taking the product. It's not the product making you feel like that. It's your own toxic exposure. It's the toxins in your body that are making you feel like that. Right? So everyone understands what I'm saying? They have 2 choices. You can talk to your people about what choice they want to make. But they can, over time, increase their dose. Now, everything starts with detoxification. That's the tip of the spear. This is important. We have great products. I'm going to talk about the other products. We're going to take a little break and then I'll talk about the other products. But it all starts with this. This is the thing that cleans out your body and makes everything else work. This is also the thing that differentiates the eating from everybody else. Because other people have weight loss products, other people have fibers. We have the best, but nobody else has this. Nobody else has Cell Defender. All right, so this is the Cell Defender with the tip of the spear. And then, of course, we just launched Cell Defender for dogs and cats. And there's a couple puppies here, right? So this was a very painful experience. I'm going to let you people know that there are a lot of people that are new. But we bought a piece of equipment to make this product. We bought it last year, and we couldn't get it to work. For our particular formulation, we couldn't get it to work, which is why it took so long to get the product out. We completely changed the way we're making it, and we've just launched the product. Now, some people say it's not chewy enough, it's brittle, it's a hard treat, especially for cats. It is chicken flavor for dogs and a little bone, and tuna flavor for cats and a little fish, like a little goldfish. I'm going to tell you this, and if you've heard my organoleptic lecture before, I am good at making products that work. The products work, the ingredients work. When it comes to organoleptics, that's color, taste, smell, and mouthfeel, that's where it gets tricky. A guy like me, I love capsules and tablets. You swallow them, I don't worry about how it tastes or smells. But once you put it in a powder or a chewable or a drink, then you got to worry about all the organoleptics. And I can only tell you, they will get better over time. Who tried the energy when it first came out and then tried it later? So it started out, my goal was less offensive. And I did that. Energy drinks are offensive. The things that make energy drinks work are bitter components, and it's hard to make them taste good. Red Bull tastes like crap. 5-hour energy tastes like crap, you know? So it was tough, but who's had it recently? It's getting better and better, right? And it's so funny because people go, I thought I was getting used to it. You know, you're not getting used to it. We're making it better over time. So the pet treats absolutely work. They're fabulous for your dogs and cats. You gotta think, if we're exposed to toxins, our pets are exposed to even more. They're down on the ground, they're licking like fertilizers and weed killers and stuff. So they have just as much, if not more, toxic exposure than we do. So it's really, really good. But it's gonna get better. We're working on the taste, we're working on the texture, we're gonna make it a better and better and better treat. I have 2 dogs, my dogs love the treats, okay? I'm not a big cat fan. Sorry if you guys love cats.
We're offended.
Yeah. My brother said, I told my brother I hate cats. He goes, that's because you've never had it prepared properly. I got hissing from the back. So, but we had given this to cats, and most cats love the little tuna flavored goldfish, but some say it's too hard, they don't like a hard treat. It's funny because it's really the level of the treatment of the animal. So like someone who works, Dr. Carla Gibbs works for us, she has cats, and her cat didn't like it, but the stray cat she feeds loves it. Is there anything about my friend Sean? My friend Sean has a dog. He's not married. The dog is his whole life. He will cook a steak for that dog and then make himself a peanut butter sandwich. I never understood this. But his dog didn't like it at first, but now his dog likes the treat. But his dog was a little finicky. He's like, that's not my prime rib. What's that? So I think it's a little bit about the level of the palate of the animal. But it doesn't matter. We are making it better and better and better, and we'll get better over time. So with that, we're gonna take like a 5-minute break. What's that? Oh, okay. We're gonna have Neil up first, and we'll take a 5-minute break. Guys, thank you. Thank you.